Good. All right. It is Thursday, July 18th. Welcome to our Board of Commissioners special meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. We will stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, individual, liberty, justice for all. Ms. Harmon, if you'll lead us in an invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, today,
Amen. All right, we've all got the agenda. It's a very short one, but we still have to approve it. So I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda. as
All
written.
those in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. All right, new business is pretty much what we have, and it is listed as job descriptions for economic development, community development, and administrative assistant. We're going to do as much of this in open session as we can. There are parts of this that we have to discuss legally in a closed session. So Elizabeth, if we step into something that needs to be enclosed, just interrupt us and
okay.
we'll save it. How do you want to start this off?
Well, I know we listed the administrative assistant position last, but I think that's probably the one that y'all can review and potentially approve today.
Okay.
So if you want to skip to that one,
Okay, let's get that
and
one out
if
of the
you
way.
and if the board has a consensus that they want to approve it, then we would need someone to make a motion. I approve the administrative assistant job description as presented.
Okay. So we have the whole description in front of us.
That's right.
And I know I have read it, but just for the record, if you could touch on the basics for us.
Oh, it's not in here.
I have a copy.
So the basics, let me pull it up on my email. I can email it to everybody right now. Actually, didn't
I thought you already did.
I did. No, it's not in the packet. That's what happens when your clerk's not here.
All right, we're doing the best. If anyone needs a printed copy, I could pull it up in my email and you can have mine.
This is based on what has been previous to me. I'm not sure how long ago it was originally created. The changes to this is that the administrative assistant reports directly to the town clerk human resources director, assists the town manager with special projects and research. This person is going to be assisting and posting job vacancies, maintaining employee records, processing new hires, terminations, personnel action forms. When it says terminations, it means the paperwork related to that, not actually making that decision.
Okay.
Filing, ordering office supplies, copying documents, compiling the weekly manager's communication, the annual employee survey that goes along with strategic plan. So that would be printing the surveys, distributing them to the department heads, collecting them and tabulating them. And of course, you can see why you wouldn't want the manager to do that, right? Have a little bit of separation of duties. Coordinating employee listening sessions, so ordering the food, sending out invites to the employees to let them know when it's happening, helping the manager write board action forms, create PowerPoints like for the budget presentation. And then pretty much all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities remain from what has been. There were no changes to that. Those are all the changes.
Okay.
Was everyone able to find it? I have it was sent Monday.
Can you send it? Because I don't have anything from Monday the 8th. I've got thoughts of the week, but that came in Sunday well. I got your weekly recap on Monday at 3:30. That's it.
All right, it's coming to you in just a moment.
Thank you, Chevelle. Let me see if I can open yours, because I couldn't open hers.
Because that's why I got it. I didn't find it. You got it? Yeah, I
Yeah.
got it.
I couldn't open hers for some
Oh.
reason. Let's see if I can open
Thank
yours.
you. Go get it.
Oh, there it is.
I
Well, we
did
get
get
that
it in
on
the
the
weekly
morning meeting.
recap, just so you know.
I got it.
I couldn't open yours, sorry.
Okay.
We're in there. Teamwork. All right.
That's okay.
I knew I'd seen it before. Couldn't open it up in here.
While you guys are reading it, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and bring them up as you go.
I think it touches on what we were hoping to achieve, and that's to take some of the smaller tasks off both yourself and the clerk, so that some bigger picture things can be managed better, more efficiently. I know sometimes that when we have a lot to accomplish, that means working after hours, working the weekends, and things like that. So hopefully that can help both you and Veronica from having to take work home with you, which I know some of this stuff is what happens. If I had to guess, the smaller tasks are what happen after hours. So.
I'd be curious to know your opinion, since it's directly gonna.
Well, Veronica and I used as I stated, the administrative assistant position job description that has been here, and we just sort of brainstormed the tasks that we thought would make sense. Yeah.
One of the things that I was looking at, the new employee actually is related to a fellow coworker, a department head.
That is correct.
My concern is with her doing HR stuff, being able to have access to everybody's information. I just think that we got to be very careful when we do that. We've had in the past other family members that have worked together, and there was some issues.
So we have an internal control in place that she cannot update any information for the relative.
I'm not alluding to that. I'm talking about personal information getting out.
Okay, will you take that risk whether somebody's your
I know,
relative or not
but I
your
just
relative?
wanted it on the record.
Yes, ma'am, I hear you. But just so the board is aware, there is a provision, section number 44 in the personnel policy titled Employment of Relatives. And so it states the town prohibits the hiring and employment of immediate family members in positions within the same department.
Right.
The town will consider employing family members or related persons in the service of the town, provided that an employee does not supervise their relative, result in a relative auditing the work of a relative, create a conflict of interest between a relative and the town, or create the potential or perception of favoritism.
I'm glad you read that. And I've actually worked with you before. She did an excellent job, but I wanted that on the record.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I will say that for today's purposes, I'd prefer to focus on job descriptions and keep, because a lot of the stuff we're talking about, we have staff in place already. But for what we're doing today, we need to keep the people separate from what we're trying to do for job.
We are
Exactly.
evaluating job
Yeah.
descriptions.
For any of what we're talking about
Yeah.
today, really. So the concerns about that aren't relevant right now to what we want.
No, I
the
just
job
wanted it
description.
stated because
Of
I've
course.
had people, question it, so I wanted it on the record.
Yep.
It's best to come from us and we're transparent
Mm-hmm.
and bring it forth.
Mhm.
So thank you.
All right, any other questions about the description? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward.
What we discussed.
Yeah. If nobody has any questions, then I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
Sorry. I would,
Said we should.
I
Might
would,
as well.
if you have taken the steps of wanting to review job descriptions, then I feel like it makes sense to have a motion on the record that you approve the job description.
I'll make a motion, we approve the job description for the administrative assistant.
All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. That one's out of the way.
I asked that question only because in kind of like our guidelines, we spoke about, you know, really not getting too involved with the manager's job duty, which I feel like is creating job descriptions. Our job is to manage her. We trust that, you know, I get why we would have some limited input. But that's
Yeah,
not
that's
the
a
reason
fair
why.
point.
I'm
And-
glad you brought that up because there are folks out in the government world who think that this might be treading too much into mayor council and not council manager.
Okay.
But Dan didn't seem to have a problem with it. So we're going to continue on. And if somebody slaps our hand, somebody slaps our hand.
All right. Well, we'll rely heavily on your suggestions for this stuff. And if you feel comfortable with us giving approval on stuff, it's not going to hurt you to have us officially agree with
I think the default is that it's better to have a motion than to not have one.
Okay.
So we already did that, but I think that's sort of the general thinking.
Yeah. For the next part, we are talking about potentially department head level stuff. So let's dive into that one. You want to introduce that and then,
Okay, so Liz was able to get information for you related to the job descriptions that you have before you. So in an effort of transparency, it's Wake Forest job descriptions for a downtown development director and an economic development manager. Fuquay Varina's job descriptions for downtown development manager and economic development manager. And Holly Springs, which I believe was one of the job descriptions the board requested, economic development program development coordinator and economic development director.
okay, so we, as a board, have talked about it up here in the past and to each other from time to time. But let's just get out of the way and decide, first of all, if we are ready to divide our current community development coordinator position into economic development, which would be attracting commercial business to town, in a broad way of saying it, and another position that would potentially manage events, social media. First, decide if we want to divide. I think that's the first thing. What do you guys think? We've all kind of chatted individually about it, but
Well, in our initial conversation, when we discussed this at a previous meeting, it was really that we were going to remove the economic development aspect from the job description because we did have a general consensus that it was a two job description. Like there was a lot packed into that one job description. But that our goal was to have the community development director and an assistant to help facilitate the community development aspect. We have a economic development office in the county, which Stephen came and spoke to us, and it was nice to hear from him directly. One of the things he pointed out was our lack of inventory and things like that. We really don't, in my perspective, I don't think we have enough to sustain an economic developer as a full-time dedicated position. I just don't see us having that capacity right now, that we should really be forming relationships with those who do have that capacity, and that's with the county. So that was where my mind was going, was, and our initial conversation was to have the assistant help alleviate some of the, like we've done with the clerk and manager, some of the more tedious tasks, so that the community development can be focused a little bit bigger picture, because I think because it is not a downtown director, that the focus should not just be on downtown. We have a reaching, I don't know, we're bigger than just Broad and Raleigh Street. So
You want to have any input on? Yeah. So if we don't do dedicated economic development, what do we do about economic development? Where do we put those tasks? I understand the county has those services, and we need to work with the county. They're also,
I think alleviating some of the more day-to-day tasks would allow for the community development director to be more collaborative with the economic developer and be able to attend meetings or have the opportunity to see a little bit bigger, broader spectrum than just, I don't know what the word is, but be a little bit more overhead.
it's my opinion that we need some economic development. I could see how an argument for a full-time dedicated economic might not be there. But you mentioned our lack of inventory. And right now, I think that is the root of our problem. And so someone who has economic development on their plate in whatever capacity, whether it's included as part of a job description or what, needs to work on getting more inventory, whether that's expansion or repurposing things. And I don't want to rely too heavily on the county because we are already seeing the county economically develop or attempting to parcels that we intended we would be a part of economically developing.
I think that's a result of our not being at the table. I think that if there is an effort made to work collaboratively, that we would be accepted. We just need to have someone willing to be at that table and in those discussions. We've had a lot of turnover in this position over time, and I don't know that we've necessarily been taken seriously in our effort to develop economically.
Just an idea, because Jeff is planner. Is that something that Jeff could help with, even if he's paid more?
Possibly.
Our current staff member is taking strides to attend economic development classes and potentially develop more skills in that arena. I think if we are able to farm out some of the more tedious tasks from the community development aspect in terms of event planning and communicating, that we would be able to see some of the economic development aspects not removed from the job description. We wouldn't have to divide them so harshly.
So there are a couple of things I just wanted to point out that Stephen hasn't been here a year yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be part of the lack of projects that the town might see. And you all brought up inventory, which is an important point. And if the board decided to hire someone that's going to be focused on developing inventory, I think you also have to consider that the town's going to have some money to help identify a site, get utilities to a site, and have that site ready. And so I don't want the town to go down a path of being like, okay, person, go find us land and sites and places to develop, and then we have no money to invest in the sites.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's going to be a lose-lose situation for the town and for whomever that employee might be.
Looking at the salaries that we have in front of us for the director and manager positions for economic and downtown development, in our initial conversation, I don't think that we budgeted for an economic development position because they are $100,000 and up in terms of salary, which comes with experience, and things like that. so I know that we would have to dip into other pots to sustain that if we did decide we needed a full-time economic development position, which is another concern.
And I share that concern in that all of our residents pay county taxes. And so, we're sort of already paying for Stephen in a sense in his department. And so perhaps we continue to work with the county and see where that gets us in a year. And if nothing, and if there's no projects and there's no inventory in a year, then at that point, maybe it makes sense for us to say, okay, we're going to do this on our own. I think it is, so we would be the only municipality in Harnett County to have an economic developer. And I know that we are much more sort of towards, we're more like some of the Wake County municipalities sometimes than we are the Harnett County ones, but I just wanted to point that out. And then also in Catawba County, now granted, they have a very strong economic development team, and their leader's been there since 1987. And so you can't compare Stephen to Catawba counties, but none of the municipalities in Catawba County employ either a community development coordinator nor a economic developer. So just information.
Yeah. I guess my concern is, you got us a book that says economic development is still not for amateurs. And I feel like we're at a pivotal moment where the county is starting to offer sewer to people near us.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the county is offering water and sewer on the bypass, for example, for a business, they lose any motivation to annex into Andrew. Because a business does not need much police service. They have to pay for trash anyway. They don't need limbs picked up. They need water and sewer.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get that from the county, there's no reason that I could think of, at least. Of course, I am not an economic development person. I'm an amateur. But there'd be no reason for a business to want to annex to Andrew and pay double the property tax for no return on that, no tangible return on that, and being in town of Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we want business in town of Andrew. Businesses close by will help with jobs and convenience for people here. But if the businesses close by aren't paying into our tax base, then it's still the rooftops and the people here that are paying all the taxes to support it. And so I get that Stephen Barrington is a good resource, but Stephen Barrington's job is to get economic growth in Harnett County. And he could also not offer a reason why a place would want to annex to Andrew. And so it would be nice, and I think it's important, if we made some kind of economic development position, or if we had someone with experience in economic development, we'd be the only municipality that had one. That's what you said. That doesn't scare me. We're the only municipality in Harnett County that is also in Wake County. We don't have major highways. We have bypasses that are going to help in the next 30 years. We don't have rail. There's not a lot that we can rest on that stands alone to say you should have business in Andrew. I think we need somebody who can really fight and go for it. I don't know what to do, how to do it. Of course, I'm not economic development, I don't have any experience in that or degree, or I won't pretend to know how to do it, but I see a lot of value in doing it. And if we hired someone or created job descriptions that were focused more one way or the other, then yes, it would cost money, but it's an investment that will produce returns. Maybe not in the first year or the second year, but long term. And what my fear is, and I'll just say it, you guys make the decisions, but we're at a time right now where waiting 2 years could mean the county surrounds us with their own commercial. I mean, we could get closed in. We could get closed in by commercial in a matter of a year or two.
Well, arguably, we gave that over a couple of weeks ago when the decision was made to allow for certain types of business in Commerce Park, and we know that that specific request was made for a reason, and we gave over the opportunity to have any say so in those businesses coming to Anger. We have now allowed them to go outside of Anger to establish. So I think if we had someone advocating on our behalf I'm a collaborative style person. I don't think that one person's success means everybody else's failure. As pointed out with the ordinance change for Commerce Park, it was said that those businesses would allow for business just to come to the town of Anger. And that thought process was used to make the decision. I don't know that we've made it advantageous for us. We're not at the table, and that's my concern. We don't have anybody advocating for us with the county. And I think if there was a request to say, what can we do together? How can we make this beneficial for both Harnett County and the town of Anger? Because ultimately, a rising tide lifts all boats. Where we see economic success outside of the town of Anger limits, it will be beneficial for everyone. So I don't know that it's a mind thought process that we should have. But where can we be present? And I just don't know that with the workload the current community development coordinator has, my mind says that person should be working and advocating for the town. But with that workload currently, I don't know that that's possible. And that's where I think an assistant would help allow this person to be more present and have those tough conversations about, what can we do?
Yeah. I could certainly appreciate collaboration. At the end of the day, businesses that's in town of Anger are also paying Harnett County tax as well. Collaboration is great, but at the end of the day, we need this commercial business to be in town of Anger, or we don't get the specific benefit we're looking for of a tax base that's more supported by commercial than residential. And so businesses, if we're using the Commerce Park we just approved as an example, we made a change to Commerce Park zoning, knowing that we would see future Commerce Park in town of Anger limits. Whether or not we did it at that property, he's ETJ anyway. He's not, the businesses that go there aren't gonna pay it anyway, but we still get the convenience benefits that you're talking about of having a place to go or having a place to get a job. That parcel was a lost cause on the taxes anyway.
I don't see it that way.
I think that if we can offer that property sewer, and I don't know how much that would cost, but I'm working on that,
Yeah.
then they would be interested in annexing.
I agree.
Unless Harnett County offers to.
We can't control Harnett County, though.
Yeah.
And at some point, the United Service Agreement is going to come back before us. I don't know why. I haven't been involved in conversations with the county about that. It's been brought up a couple of times, but that will say town of Anger is providing utilities to this area, which will not be in the town limits.
Yeah.
And Harnett Regional is providing to this area.
Even if we keep a community development coordinator and we get an assistant to take the menial task similar to the assistant off that person's plate, then are we left with a person who is experienced in economic development, or someone who is going to learn economic development? And I ask that because I feel like it's our duty to provide and pay for the best quality staff that we can to do it. I haven't read this book, Economic Development is Not for Beginners, but if I just read the title, it just solidifies to me that, I mean, everyone must learn how to do it at some point. We're not born knowing how to do it. But I'm concerned about the time it takes to learn it and the time we have, because we're right in the thick of it right now. We're not planning for commercial growth 5 years down the road. I mean, we are, but we're not planning that that's when we want the commercial growth to be.
That's how long it takes. This is not an overnight deal. It's a consistent effort all the time. There's no instant.
But we could have somebody who's already further ahead.
Even if they're, because we're now speaking about the person and less the job description. Even if we hired someone who has outside knowledge of economic development, we've now gone through another turnover, who has to reestablish new relationship, who has to take the time to get to know the movers and shakers who are interested in developing in the town of Angier, who may not have any previous knowledge of the town. There's been 4 in this position since 2019. That's 5 years. What have we lost in those 5 years? Because it seems there's been a lot of question about what this job means and what it could.
I think it's hard to question the capabilities when there's not been a clear description.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like to maybe immediately jump to hiring another full-time position for economic development, that perhaps offering an assistant where some of those smaller tasks can be handled would give the opportunity to see what the value is, what could be there. I feel like there's been so much turnover and there's been a lot of change even since we've come in as a board that I don't want to overwhelm it. Like I want to try to keep things as simple.
I think that one of the biggest challenges our organization is facing is that there has been tremendous amount of turnover throughout the entire department. So since 2017, there's been 3 full-time managers and 2 interims. There's been a number of finance directors, so I guess 3 finance directors. Towns were not built for that. Towns are built for people to come and work their way up, like several of our long-term employees have done. And, I expressed to Jim, I feel like the town takes, 3 steps forward and goes back 5 steps, like every month. And so it's going to be hard for me to deliver success to the board and the community when we're constantly trying to fill roles that we have to have and keep, the town is a town, but it's also a business and we have to pay the bills and we have to pay our people. And, that's my point of view. And I do want to say from a budgetary perspective, whatever the board decides, of course, myself and our staff will enact, but we did not budget for a new full-time department head. And so the contingency line that you have is $237,440. And so if the board was to decide that they wanted to create another full-time position, I would say that's where that money has to come from. I just want to give you the financial overview of decisions that you might make.
That's why I liked what Ashley said about us looking into Jeff, because I do know when we hired him, he had quite a few, on his thing. He has a lot of experience with economic development. So
even if it's where he could just collaborate.
Exactly.
With Chrissy.
Or with Harnett County, so they can have the dialogue and start opening up. Because I totally agree with Chevelle. We've never been at the table, and we do need representation. And Jeff knows a lot of people. So he wouldn't be behind the 8 ball. He'd actually have really good investment already in it. So I think if we give him maybe additional or, well, we don't have the money right now, but if we gave him additional responsibility, and I know he can handle it, he's phenomenal. So I think right now, if we did that, that would help us out for right now, because like you said, we can't wait.
The current community development position is housed within the planning department. I would
What got moved, didn't it?
Yeah, I thought I got
make my assumption.
So housed in the physical location of the planning department,
yeah.
but reports to the
That's what I meant.
manager, which is the-
Physical office is in planning
Yes,
department,
right.
reports to the manager. I would say, if I had to guess, I'm sure there's a conversation that happens pretty regularly between planning and community development with a,
and so
because I know that, I know you spoke about wanting to speak about just the position. We do have a staff member in that position, so I'm going to call her by her name because she's not just a staff member. So Chrissy, I know, is in a lot of conversations when it comes to redevelopment that's happening within downtown. I was in a meeting with her at a business who was interested in possibly coming to town. So I know that those conversations are ongoing. The reports that she submits, I see, that those relationships are being built. As Stephen mentioned, that it's a long-term process. It's a consistent thing. It doesn't happen overnight. So I'm sure there are strengths that Jeff has. That's why we have a great team. Strengths that Jeff has, strengths that Elizabeth has, strengths that Chrissy has, where they, ask each other questions and,
Collaborate.
right. That's the point.
And so I would say that if the board decided to make that decision, for one thing, we would need to speak to Jeff,
Right.
because I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, hey, we hired you to be the planning director,
No, definitely.
and then say, we're going to give you this now.
Yep.
And so if that was agreeable to him, then I think that the community development coordinator would need to report to him, because if he's doing economic development, it doesn't make sense for them to report to the manager.
Right.
But that was the change that was made last year, right before I came, when Richard brought this sort of, I'll call it like a combination position before the board.
I know in one of the previous community development positions, that when it was reporting to planning, this was pre a couple of planners, this person had an economic development aspect in their job description, however, was left out of economic development conversations when it came to people coming to planning saying, hey, we want to invest commercially in town. That person was not included in those conversations, which was, hard for them to navigate, being they had experience but weren't included. So,
All right, so the first question I would ask is, if we are talking about asking Jeff to help with some of the economic development side of it, then do we still need community development that is giving some responsibility of economic to Jeff and an assistant for community development? That's a rhetorical question. It's just a thought, so you don't have to answer it. And again, we really do, whoever fills these positions is not our problem. That's Elizabeth. And we're not going to meddle in that. The only control that we have is what these positions are and what we get. And I can appreciate, I think you guys know how I feel, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I'll just leave you with this. Everyone is making a great point. I couldn't say that anything was wrong about what anybody said up here. I will just say that for me, my only responsibility is this town. And that doesn't mean I don't want to cooperate with the county, but I'm not sitting here to benefit the county. I am only here to benefit Andrew, and that's it. And that being said, fear of turnover or waiting to see what someone can do or even complacency is not something I'll agree to. And not that it matters, because most of the time I don't get a vote. All I care about is that I'm here for Andrew, and if we have staff, then that staff needs to be the best that can be found for what our budget is or what we're willing to pay to further that. So I'll just leave it at that because I don't know that there's much more to discuss about it.
Does the board want to entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss the topics that have been brought up, which are for additional duties to be handed to an existing director and revision of community development and what that looks like?
That's protected stuff.
I think that we're getting close to the
Okay.
line, and I would rather be safe than sorry.
Okay, so we'll enter closed session, but if, any decisions that we make have to
We
be
have
made
to
in
come-
open session.
yes,
So
thank you.
we will be back one way or another.
I make a motion we go into closed session to discuss personnel in accordance with General Statute 143.318.11, 6.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous.